Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
I'm Asana Cayetano.
And thank you for joining us this morning.
It is Tuesday, the 25th of May, and we're back from a long weekend, Marlene.
That's right. 3 days to reset, to enjoy. I know there was a bit of rain that probably just dampened things for a while, but nonetheless, it was a great weekend.
You know, I am never one to complain about a little bit of rain here and there, right? Because as you know, Marlene, I'm very much into plants and garden and stuff. So the opportunity to get fresh rainwater is always a good thing for the plants, right?
All right. So yeah, definitely. And I think sometimes when we think of when the rain comes, we don't necessarily put into account the agricultural sector and how much they rely on our seasonal rains.
Certainly.
But it is also, I think, a good reminder as we end off May to consider what lies ahead. And that is, of course, the start of the rainy season and most importantly, the start of the hurricane season.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what has been the preliminary forecast for the upcoming hurricane season. Normally, by now, we would begin to get information in terms of the names of the storms for the Atlantic hurricane season, and of course, more or less, what kind of activity we're to expect over the course of the next 6 months. But I guess that's information we can follow up on nonetheless.
No, it was released a few months ago, but I think that, they are predicting, similar to last year, an above average season. So in other words, it's supposed to be active.
Yeah.
And they are expecting numbers similar to last year. But you know, the key thing, and I always hear the meteorologists say it all the time, and it's so important, even if there's only a prediction of maybe 1 or 2 storms forming, if that one comes near us, we got to be prepared.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of whether the activity will be high or low. Yes, we need to be more vigilant, but most importantly, we have to be prepared.
That is so very true, Marlene.
All right, but we got to get moving into our show for today because there is a lot to discuss. And we're going to start off with some motivation to get your day and week going right. And that means it's time for our eye opener. Always being rushed and in a hurry doesn't allow time for the soul to enjoy life, which is composed of small, ordinary moments that can be beautiful. Our lives have become increasingly fast-paced, and the effort to keep up often occupies all our time and attention. We're so busy rushing from point A to point B that we forget to enjoy the ride. We race to the store without noticing the leaves on the trees or the clouds in the sky. We go through the checkout line feeling too pressed to converse with the cashier or the other people in line. One thing we can do, wherever we live, is bring awareness breaks into our day and take 10 minutes to simply look out the window and observe what's happening outside. We might also choose to cultivate a relationship with someone we see regularly, such as a clerk at the convenience mart or a neighbor. Taking time to have a conversation that is not necessary is a true luxury in this day and age, as is staring out the window. Participating in these acts of timelessness makes the biggest city in the world start to feel a little bit more like a small town.
So often we're caught up in what we're doing and the hustle and bustle of getting to somewhere on time or getting something done within a certain time that we don't take 5 or 10 minutes to really sit down and soak things in, you know, and appreciate the leisure that comes with life. More so when we're in the professional space. A lot of times we're in a hurry to get to work. We're getting ready, we're off to somewhere, and we don't, you know, sit back and say, you know what, let me enjoy the ride today. Let me not worry about the traffic, and let me just simply look at the passers-by and see what's happening and take in all of that scenery. And I'm saying that to simply say this, right? A lot of times, some of the best ideas or some of the best memories come to mind when you just step back for a few and enjoy that 10 minutes, as opposed to thinking about, okay, well, what do I do next? Or I'm late for this, or, you know, this person hasn't contacted me as yet, or what have you. Just take that little moment. It's sort of like I refer to it as a moment in shrine, right? You simply take that little moment, put it in a capsule, appreciate it, and then move on to the next thing. It allows you to be able to breathe, so to speak.
Absolutely. You know, and it's one of the things that we neglect to do in our day-to-day lives. It harkens back to that old saying, life is what happens when you're busy planning.
Yeah.
And it is true, especially, you know, you have little ones. They're there, they're present. You could be thinking about many different things, recapping what happened at work for the day, you know, paying attention to your television, your phone, planning your meal, cooking your meal. And so much of the relationship that you build with them is going to be in that time spent. You're paying attention to whatever drawing they're doing or video they're watching and having that level of connection. And that's just with your kids. It's the same with nature. It's the same with the day. And it's the same with people in general. I love, especially when I'm out of Belize, because it's a bit strange to do in Belize, but I love just sitting and people watching. One of my favorite places to do it, to kill time in an airport, is just sit and watch people and watch interactions. It's fascinating for me to make that observation. And it's kind of that moment where you just, you sit and you put into perspective just where you fit in the greater world. And it's the same if you're going to do it on a drive. Look at you guys. You as reporters, you're you know, in some far-flung village or space in any random time. How often do you walk through or trek through a savannah and think to yourself, man, this is like undiscovered parts of the country?
These are the areas that most people won't get a chance to walk through there or go through there. Let me go back a bit though quickly. I look at the irony of the situation where you're mentioning finding perspective in an airport. Because, for instance, if you're at the Miami International, one of the busiest ports of entry in the United States, and all the hurly-burly of people passing by, you look at that image and you look at where you fit into either the global context or whatever it is that you're looking for that kind of composition. It's interesting because that kind of a thing where you're looking at people, you know, lugging their carry-on and all those other stuff, and you're sitting there watching like, okay, well, I'm going to Paris or I'm going somewhere, but this is where I am in that particular moment. It's amazing.
I do enjoy it, you know. But you don't have to sit down and watch people. It can also just be, as you said, I like the idea of what you said, just paying attention while you drive. Because we do it on autopilot all the time, and we don't see anything. People jogging this morning as you come down to work, those at the bus stop, just pay attention to nature. What does it look like, you know? The Mayflowers are in bloom, much to my allergies discontent. The flamboyant, you know, all the flowers are bright and beautiful. Take the time to enjoy it this morning. All right, but we got to get moving, and that means we're going to check in with our weather for today. We're going to go ahead and read the prepared forecast for today. The general situation is for a relatively moist airflow to continue to dominate our weather.
Our 24-hour forecast calls for sunny skies with cloudy spells today. Tonight, the skies will be cloudy at times. A few outbreaks of showers and isolated thunderstorms will develop, mostly over southern areas.
All right, our winds are moving from the east at 10 to 20 knots, and our sea state is going to be choppy. Our high temperatures for today are going to be
86 along the coast, 88 inland, and 78 degrees Fahrenheit in the hills.
All right, and our lows for tonight are going to be 78 along the coast, 72 inland, and 66 in the hills.
So the outlook for Wednesday and Wednesday night calls for cloudy spells with a few showers or isolated thunderstorms developing mostly over the south.
All right, and we want to thank our forecaster, Catherine Cumberbatch, for preparing that update. As we can see, the showers have taken down the high temperatures for today, and they're below 90. That's good.
Brings a little bit of cool.
Yeah, we can all appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, as we said, there is a lot to discuss, a 3-day weekend and a lot of news to cover. So we're going to shift gears to Eye on the News, and we'll take a look at the big stories coming out of the weekend and those in the week ahead.
There was a flurry of activity off the coast of southern Belize over the weekend when word began to spread of the crash landing of an aircraft near Mohoki. This would be off the coast of Placencia. And the fact that quite a number of residents and fishermen in the area scrambled to the location because word got out that this aircraft was carrying illicit cargo, right? A drug plane. And so people were out there trying to see what they can salvage of the wreck. And my understanding is that the police and the Coast Guard and the relevant officials were also out on the scene as well. This is in the broader context, Marlene, of what appears to be an increase in drug trafficking activities through the country of Belize over the past several weeks. You would recall that a week ago or so, we covered the landing of an aircraft in the northern Orange Walk district. This is near the border with Mexico. And in that particular instance, the aircraft appeared to have been successfully offloaded for its contents that were presumably carried over into Mexico. And so the Belize Police Department, as well as the other authorities, have their hands full in terms of either being able to survey Belize's airspace for any kind of illegal activity in terms of flights originating from South America passing through. And it goes to show that this particular issue doesn't go away. It's something that is a constant. We've been reporting repeatedly on instances of aircrafts landing in and around the country. This is just another one of them.
Well, yeah. I do think the frequency of the reports is something to be noted, and these are just the planes that have been reported, you know.
Yeah.
Those that perhaps land successfully and leave the country as well will never be reported. But we can't deny that I think, Isani, maybe in the past couple of years that we have been reporting far more frequently on drug plane landings. It used to be intermittently, you know, 1, 2 a year, and they were really sensational stories. Now, it's so much more of a frequent occurrence that it clearly shows that there is an ongoing ring with heavy involvement of Belizeans. I think that's no surprise to anyone. But the point is that this continues to be a critical issue that's on the plate of the police department, of our national defense forces, and that it is something that seems to not, it's difficult to get control of the situation, and I'm sure there's a lot of intelligence gathering taking place, but it's easy to be able to acknowledge that it is happening far more frequently, at least reports of crashed planes in the country.
Belize's geographic location makes it an ideal point for transshipment of cargo from the south. And the fact that we don't necessarily have the kind of resources to be able to respond to every tip or lead that we get also allows for these kind of activities to happen sort of unabated in a sense, right?
So I don't know know about unabated, and I would say yes, geographically, but also it does mean that there are persons, there has to be people involved on the ground, which means there's an openness and willingness to take that risk, and perhaps even a lack of concern of consequences or potentially being caught.
Yeah, I'm saying unabated because when you look at perhaps the ratio of successful landings, so to speak, versus those that are actually intercepted, there's a huge disparity there, right? And so that's my perspective. That's how I'm looking at that.
I think that it is one of those things where one, we won't ever know the total amount of successful landings and takeoff because it was successful. And it is also a serious situation that I'm sure, or I imagine, there must be some strategy to be able to resolve. These planes tend to land in specific areas.
Yeah.
You know, you know that you're usually out on the drug plane hunt. And so it means that community members or people who traverse those areas to prepare for landing have some level of involvement.
So the other thing that I wanted to touch on that happened over the course of the weekend as well, you would recall that over the past few days and last week, there was a marked increase in the number of homicides that are gang-related. And so over the weekend, the Commissioner of Police, along with Brother Nuri Mohammed and Brother Abdul Nunes, met with some of these groups and the individuals belonging to those particular groups in an attempt to, have an intervention to bring everybody to the table to try to resolve what some of these issues are. And this was done through the Conscious Youth Development Program. Now, we've been hearing of CYDP for quite some years, from the mid-90s, if I could recall correctly, and the work that has been done to try to curb gang-related incidents and to try to deter people from either becoming involved or actively participating in gang life and culture. And so this is just another step. Whether or not this particular intervention proves to be successful down the road, we're yet to see. I know that on Friday, the commissioner, in speaking with the media, mentioned that a person of interest had been taken into custody following a sensational murder that happened on Thursday on Fabers Road, where a young man lost his life in a volley of gunfire.
Yeah.
Right? And so that was, or appears to be, another high-profile case where the department is investigating who the players are in that particular incident. Suffice it to say that it was a gang-related execution. Right? So that's another thing that transpired over the weekend. Yeah. Perhaps if we get to speak with the commissioner himself today in the press brief that's scheduled for today, then maybe we can get more details in terms of, who are all involved in terms of that discussion. So that is that. The other thing, Marlene, is it being an extended weekend, the number of homicides that were recorded from Friday up until yesterday is also one that is alarming. It's of some concern, given the fact that incidents were being reported as far south as Punta Gorda, and you have in Ladyville and other parts of the country, including Belmopan as well. So we're going to be very busy today in terms of trying to piece together the details of these respective incidents. There's also that image that we have of Mr. and Mrs. Frankel, whose remains were discovered on Friday as well, after the couple going missing a few days earlier. And this is such a heartbreaking story where a man and a woman are, for all intents and purposes, abducted from their home in the 8 Miles area, only to be found murdered sometime later. Yeah. So that is what we have. I also want to mention as well, Marlene, that this week there will be a sitting of the House of Representatives. Again, this is against a backdrop, I should say, that the activities that are being undertaken by the unions remain ongoing, in terms of the strike action, where you have the Belize National Teachers Union and, of course, the Public Service Union taking industrial action against government.
Well, yeah. This is week 5 of the strike action that is being that the teachers are continuing with. We got some numbers from their latest survey. We know that as many as 75% voted, 74% have voted for a continuation of the strike. The PSU issued a press release last night as well saying that they are in fact proceeding. 92% of their respondents for their survey said that they wanted to continue with the trade dispute, and 65% agreed to continued strike action. They also spoke, and we must note that the government has made it clear that proceeding with strike action past May 14th would result in a salary deduction for the days that the union members are not striking. That's for government workers. And so yesterday's press release spoke to putting together a telethon to raise money to offset what the public servants will lose for continuing the strike.
So yeah, I was in Orange Walk on Friday where a protest was held in Sugar City. And in speaking with the president of the PSU, to that very issue that you brought up about the docking of salaries post May 14th. And so he was saying, well, you know what? Sacrifices need to be made for the message to be sent and for the point to be, for the point to get across. These individuals who are part of the wider umbrella of the unions are prepared to face salary cuts in this particular instance so that the government is able to understand where they're coming from. And that is perhaps as clear as the message can be sent. This is from their point of view nonetheless, right? And so that was what was shared as well.
The interesting question is, for me, is seeing what's going to happen with teachers. As we have learned, and we keep on ensuring that people are aware of, the government cannot deduct or withhold salaries for teachers who are working in a school that is not a government school.
Yeah.
And so that decision has to come from the management of those schools directly. We spoke with the Minister of Education last week. We asked him if he had been in dialogue with the management about withholding salaries. He said no. But it will be interesting to see what the management of the school decides as to whether or not they will withhold salaries from teachers who are on strike.
We'll see what happens as we near the end of May, because it's nearing payday for most, teachers and public officers. So we'll see what bearing that has on the overall activities that are taking place in respect of the strike action.
Well, I do think that, when you consider how long the strike has been going on, it's past the 1 month mark now, moving into week 5, or just about 1 month, I should say. And there doesn't seem to be a clear indicator that things are going to get resolved immediately. That's just from the outside. Now, I don't know when the unions or if the unions are scheduled to go back to the table with government, or whether or not there's openness to be able to find a solution.
Yeah. What I can also say, Marlene, is that both the president of the BNTU and the president of the PSU also mentioned on Friday that they are in the process of responding to the latest proposal that was put forth by the government, and this would have come by way of the public statement that the Prime Minister gave the Wednesday before last. Right? So they are in the process of putting together something as a counter response or a counter proposal, should I say. And there has not been a definitive date or timeline as to when that will be put forward. Suffice to say that they are working on it.
Or whether or not they choose to go an alternative route. The Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry did offer themselves as a mediator for this issue very early on. We haven't heard anything about being able to get someone else involved to see if they can hammer out a solution here. This is unsustainable to be moving into week 5 of a strike, and I'm sure it's exhausting on both ends. But there has to be the only way the strike comes to an end is if there's an agreement on some terms. And so we'll see, from my perspective, I don't know what happens moving forward, but this is uncharted territory here. Everything about what we're seeing with the strike is uncharted territory. We have an economic crisis. We also have, in the middle of a pandemic, teachers are on strike, but the children weren't in school anyway. And so it is really just, we can only wait and see how this all pans out.
And it's on record historically as the longest strike that is taking place in our time. So that brings to an end our Eye on the News for this morning. It's a lot for us to unpack in the 6 o'clock newscast, but we certainly invite you guys to tune in at 6 o'clock, either on News 5 Live or via Facebook, and get yourself abreast of what has been happening and what continues to happen in and around Belize. That does it for us.
All right, and with that, we're going to get moving into our show for today. And our first conversation, we're going to be finding out more about a good governance and ethics course. This is a partnership that is taking place between Galen University and the Ministry of Public Service. So we're going to be talking to one of the lecturers and some of the participants to find out more about what they plan to cover and just how helpful it will be within the workplace.
And our second conversation is with the National Sports Council as they receive help in developing an effective national sports system. So we're going to have with us the National Sports Coordinator as well as the Director of the Sports Council and of course someone from the Apex Global Sport Group who will be discussing this issue in its entirety.
And to close off for today, we are going to get the results from the National Garifuna Council's 36th Annual Convention. They voted in their new executive, and we'll have those results for you at the end of today's show.
All right, before we go to our first commercial break, we have a birthday shout out for you guys. And we're saying happy birthday to Josiah Ruiz.
All right.
There he is.
Josiah, we hope you have a great day today. Oh, the big 4. All right, a big boy now. We do hope you have a fantastic day, and that comes from all of us here at Channel 5. We're going to take that break now. When we come back, we'll be talking about what it's like to learn good governance and ethics in a classroom setting. So please.
That's the sound of fuel efficiency. Every day, every time, I choose Una Fuels powered with Dynamax. Una, a brand committed with the future.
It's a fact that with Smart, you get truly unlimited everything. Only with Smart, you get unlimited data anytime, while with the other guy, it's only double data on weekends. With unlimited data every day with Smart, there's no need to wait. So, it's a fact that our unlimited plans beat the competition. Stop being measured and told when to use your data and get unlimited talk, text, and data. Experience the true unlimited plans with Smart. That's a fact. Make the switch and live smart.
In these challenging times, the one thing that is certain is that the Belize Bank Limited is here for you. There is nothing more important than your health and safety, and we continue to make every effort to make banking safer for you. Our staff is working around the clock to make sure you can do your banking conveniently 24/7 using our mobile banking app and online banking and keeping ATMs up and running. We value your relationship with us and are here to provide the support you need. First responders are also out there 24/7. Thank you, healthcare workers, security forces, firefighters, caregivers. You are all appreciated. Stay safe. We will get through this together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
And we'll be back in a few, so stay tuned. Thanks, Jen. Hey there, we know you have to head out to work shortly, but don't forget that you can stay tuned by watching us on our Facebook live stream. Find us at Open Your Eyes BC, and you can continue watching there. You can also download Facebook Watch on your streaming device, and you can watch at your own convenience.
And for all the behind-the-scenes fun, follow us on Instagram at OYEBelize. So,
Find us
and follow us
today.
Dwayne Moody, Isani Cayetano, Andrea Polanco, Paul Lopez. Your News 5 Belize teams do whatever it takes, go wherever they need to go, so you can catch the story wherever you are, whenever you want, on whatever device. Channel 5 Belize on television, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, because news is now everywhere, all the time. And so are we.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
And welcome back. We're getting into our first conversation of our show this morning. And with us via Zoom, we have lecturer and good governance ethics course at the Galen University. We have with us Carlos Magana. Good morning, Mr. Magana.
Good morning, Isani. Good morning, Marlene. Happy to be here.
All right. We also have with us joining as participants, we have Jian Cho, who is from the forensics department. He's a participant in the Good Governance and Ethics course. We also have Felice Shaw, who is also a participant from the Ministry of Education. Good morning, gentlemen.
Hey, good morning.
Morning again.
Let's begin by getting an overview of what the Good Governance and Ethics course is about and what it sets out to do in the context of the public service.
Okay, thanks once again. Good morning to the general public and giving us this opportunity to be able to explain and to verse what this course is on. Its main objectives that the course would be entailed to is to bring in and explain the role of the public officer in containing corruption. We know that one of the most buzzwords at the moment is corruption. We see movements around the country of Belize trying to determine if there is or we can remove from our society's concept a corruption. So there is this agreement between the Ministry of the Public Service of the Government of Belize and the Galen University to be able to impart this course that deals with a training of trainers program to deliver good governance, transparency, and ethics in the Belizean public service to all those who are part of the public service. Not everybody at this moment can be able to take the course, so there, we have a pool that is within 30 to 39 public officers who are attending the course. The topic is interesting. When I was called in to be part of it, it caught my attention. Good governance, transparency, and ethics. Especially knowing what is going around in the country, it did call my attention, and I said, based on my personal values, based on who I have been raised up to be from a young boy, I said yes.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to be able to participate in this process. And I personally want to see a difference in my country. I want to see that this historical actions that have been going through administrations, if it can be set back, can be set to a position where we do not need to be focusing it as a concept in our culture, in our society. So I took on the challenge one as being asked by Galen, and I said, perfect, I would deal with it. It's a new paradigm that we're trying to set into the mindset of those who are participating. Change is never easy. Change is one of the most difficult things to do when you have culturalized a process and you have accepted it and it's embedded within the day-to-day life and activity of an organization. In this case, it is the government of Belize. So that mindset, that perception that is out there, that we are not doing what needs to be done, that monies are not being allocated, and so that monies that have been allocated are not being used in and for the purposes it has been done.
Now,
we just see small actions being done from those monies that have been allocated. So one of these objectives is for the officer to understand that corruption needs to be contained. We also discuss about accountability. It's a crucial aspect in good governance. We have also highlighted strongly the concept of integrity.
Yeah.
Why integrity is crucial in understanding why corruption needs to be removed, eroded from and within our system.
Carlos, if we could just backtrack a bit, because one of the things I think is interesting is understanding how you put together a curriculum for something like this. We talk about words like good governance, transparency, accountability, and even ethics, and they become buzzwords, and it's not very often that we move into the substance of what it represents. Within the public service, of course, that has even deeper meaning. So how do you devise a curriculum for the trainers that you're training?
Okay, first, we had a manual that was already developed by Love Foundation with the input of the U.S. Embassy, Carsi, and so there was already a document that was already prepared. So we did not really prepare the document. It's an external document that we have received. Nonetheless, the document was revised. It's not simply taking it with a closed eyes look.
Yeah.
It was revised. The content was analyzed. I had the privilege, together with the administration from David, to review the content on a step-by-step process. And we found it to be within what is the expectation of such a course. So content-wise, the manual had its value. So we were able to accept that. Then we saw the time frame, and the time frame was the most difficult action to set together. There was a recommendation, and the time frame was accepted. And having all this information that needs to be portrayed, that needs to be set out to the officers in a limited, I call it, as a lecturer, I call it a limited time. Maybe for others, they would believe it's much time, 6 weeks. We have sessions 2 times per week, 3 hours per session. But we need to cover a certain amount of information so that these public officers can embed the information, understand that it is on a changing process. We want to change the culture. So we have to be able to move within that 3 hours, cover a module. So it becomes very, very tight, but we are, just what I said, we are able to we're achieving what we are looking for.
Yeah.
Let me get Gian and Phyllis in on the conversation at this point. Gian, let's start with you. What got you interested in the first instance to enroll in this particular course as part of your continued professional development?
All right, thanks, Isani. And morning again, everyone. Morning, Belize. The enrollment process, I can't speak to how other departments nominated candidates, but myself and another head of department under the Ministry of Home Affairs were nominated by the Chief Executive Officer. So it was, from my ministry's approach, it was a nomination process that came from the CEO. That said, I am very honored and feel privileged that I have the chance to participate in this initial cohort. As Mr. Magana said, it's only a little over 30 of us that are being viewed as the trainers that will go and train our colleagues. No? So in terms of what I look forward to, I think as a group, and Felix could probably comment on this as well, as a group, we're all pretty much aware of our obligations under the public service regulations, under the various acts. What this course is bringing new to us is building our confidence as trainers. And we actually had one full morning dedicated to training methodology, adult learning principles. It's building our confidence as trainers to go and train our colleagues, to build the capacity of other departments, other ministries, to be able to implement integrity plans, to be able to implement more good governance measures, and to raise that awareness, as Mr. Magania said, of the need to change the culture that currently exists. And quite frankly, the discussions have been centered around the difficulty of changing the culture that exists in many offices, many departments, towards one of increased transparency and increased accountability.
Felix, tell us about the conversations in the class so far. How open and honest are you all being with each other about the realities on the ground?
Well, good morning again. Good morning, Belize. It's a privilege to be here to share the experiences that we're going through. We have had some very healthy discussions. We have had some very, in my opinion, genuine discussion to sharing some of the incidences, some of the examples we may have seen in the public or in our own departments of some of the challenges that we face when it comes to corruption. And also I feel a genuine interest in doing something, because we're told that it has to start somewhere. And we're told that if it has to start somewhere, it should start with us. Yeah. It starts with me, it starts with you, it starts with individuals. Feeling that void and interest that we can do better in terms of our public service governance.
And from your perspective, Mr. Magana, let's talk about whether or not the current situation that we find ourselves in, where there is a need to train people on things like good governance and ethics, is it an actual learning gap, or is it a matter of decision-making or poor structures in place?
I think the two last that you mentioned are the key focus. Structures. There is, from the feedback that I have gotten through the course, let me start with this. The feedback that I've gotten from the course is that officers know what needs to be done, and sometimes the ability to do it at the level of administration that they are ties their hands many times. A second point that we have found out is many of the current regulations or acts that exist are, the term that they use is obsolete, and once we discuss it and we see it through, I personally as a lecturer find it to be obsolete. I'm no liar. I want to state that. I'm not a liar.
But okay? It's also, even our best laws, they're a bit counterproductive, because while they lay out all the processes that should take place, there's always that caveat in the end that says, unless as per the minister's discretion as well.
Yeah.
Doesn't that always leave the door open for a lack of accountability?
It does. It does. And one of the things that I have tried to set to the participants, and I have two of them, and I can imagine others are listening, is that we need to be honest. I try to be as honest as possible. I set the conditions on the table. It has to do nothing that deals with a political party or a non-political party. No, it has to do nothing. It is about beliefs. So we're focusing that this is an action that we're trying to bring in a new paradigm within the system. We need to change this system to be able to reach to good governance, transparency, and ethics, which at the end of the day will involve or cover accountability. Yeah. So that is where we need, but the laws that we have, many of the laws that we have are so obsolete that does not permit it to go through. So this is one of the things that need to be looked at from the national administration or from the national executive. And I heard Minister, the AG, saying that there is a revision of many laws, and I hope that this can be done because that is what we need. To have good governance, we need to be in current days laws. That's the word that they are setting to us. We need to be at current, and we're living in that era that can be a reality. We need not to be behind or be having to deal with these laws of so many years.
But there's also the notion that you would need to have political will in terms of being able to make the necessary amendments and revision to the laws accordingly so that there is the sense of good governance. Wouldn't you agree?
Fully agree. And when the signing of the MOU took place, Minister Henry clearly stated that they are focusing and they do not only want to have it as a word concept, but they really want to have it as an action. And by starting with this first cohort, starts to set the scenario, starts to set the moment for that action to take place, and we see it then being brought to light or to light.
How do you?
One of the things that he mentioned is that for public officers to continue growing within the public service, they will need to have taken a course in good governance.
That's good. That's good. Gian and Phyllis, let me ask a question. It's come up a few times already, the question of things like integrity, and also I hear you talk about changing a culture. Change management is a process, and it takes time. You don't take people from where they were to where you want to go overnight. And having had the experience of leadership within your organization, within your particular departments, you perhaps are able to recognize that where there may be processes that exist, there may be a general sense of morality. We know what's good and we know what's right and what's wrong. But the integrity issue, following through, doing the work and not doing shortcuts, that's tough to change. From the course that you have seen so far, the outline, what gives you hope that you'll be able to implement the type of change management that will be necessary?
All right, well, I can go ahead and start. So the advantage of having this initial course, as we keep saying, is it's a first group, a first cohort that will go and train other departments and the wider public service. And as Mr. Magana said, the vision is that eventually through this initial group, we'll train 14,000 people. But training is just one aspect. One of the as I mentioned to Mr. Magana the other day, one of the things that has really stuck with me from so far in the course is a case study from Hong Kong that he shared in one of his lectures. Hong Kong was in a similar place to us a few decades ago, and they made some radical changes to their entire society and governance system that has been able to improve on just the overall anti-corruption atmosphere. And they took a three-pronged approach, if I recall correctly. Education was one, was just one of a three-legged stool. Without that, the whole entire stool would fall down. The other two was investigation or deterrence, and the other one was prevention. So investigation, prevention, and education were the three-pronged approach that Hong Kong took to improve on their system. So education is just one aspect of it. I think we are all well aware in this course that it's a lot of theory being taught. Eventually, we have to go back and implement. One of the other techniques that we're also learning in the course is how to do an integrity plan, and that's actually the capstone project that we'll be presenting in a couple weeks' time. And for that, you have to sit down and do a SWOT analysis, analyze the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of your department or your ministry. Look at the current situation, look at where you want to improve, focus on a few. You can't bite off more than you can chew in the beginning. Focus on a few issues, priority issues that you want to implement measures against, and whether to reduce the occurrence of or to strengthen that area. And look at a vision, a marketing strategy, and monitoring and evaluation. So the tools that we're learning in this course, myself as a head of department, I can quickly take back and redo it again with my management team, with my entire staff, make it a participatory approach. That's something we've been stressing throughout the course. This can't just be a top-down approach. It has to be from bottom up as well. So that it has a buy-in of your department. And if each government department does that, all 40 or so government departments, then we should, as Mr. Felix said, make a good start. It won't be the end of it. It has to be, in my opinion, this has to be at least an annual refresher course or some shortened version of it that public officers should be required to take.
Now, Felix, how do you see yourself as the person who is now armed with this information going back to the Ministry of Education, which is, for all intents and purposes, one of the larger ministries in government? How do you see yourself as sort of the evangelist, if I may, taking back this newfound knowledge to the masses of your colleagues?
Well, as Jan mentioned, it has to start somewhere, and first of all, this course has been exposing us to a number of principles, to a number of standards that we can use to start somewhere. In our case, Jan mentions about developing an integrity plan. So one place we start is we start from within our small unit, from, in this case, my department, the District Education Center. The discussion starts. We look at, for example, in developing that integrity plan, we had to use two tools. One is SWOT analysis, and that requires discussion. We look at the internal aspects of the center, of the organization, and we also look at the opportunities and threats that exist within the context of good governance. And then we also are using the Pestelli analysis. And so these requires discussions, sober discussions, genuine discussions. So it will start within my center, first of all, the discussion, and then thereafter, we have to present this plan to the public service, and I'm sure I have to also present it to the senior management in my ministry. And once that is looked at and it's something that we can actually use to help develop confidence, integrity, as Marlene had discussed earlier. But I also want to point out that I think trust is a very important aspect of good governance. It's a very good, important aspect of integrity. We have to build trust. Trust within the organization, and I think trust within the public that we work with, because some of these trusts that we have been eroded due to incidences of not good governance.
And that's a key point there, and I think Isani asked about political will, and you know, it cannot be separated from building that trust, as you mentioned, Feliz. It is, for someone to be able to do what they know is right, they do have to ensure that their basic needs are met. And job security, especially when you're a public servant, is something that is concerning. We've heard stories in the past, many times before, different administrations, of political victimization. How much do you feel that contributes, whether it exists or the fear of political victimization, a hasty transfer, a push out of a department, or actual loss of job. How much do you think that contributes to the situation where there is not sufficient integrity in some of the departments?
Well, I would say, in my opinion, it does contribute to some extent. I can't really say the numerical percentage and so, but it does, because when you have that feeling, then it will be difficult for you're like put against a wall to carry out certain decisions or to make certain decisions. So I think it plays a very big role. For example, in the recent change of government, I think every department had tense moments because we knew that certain changes would come. We just don't know where. So I think it's a key factor.
Yeah. History dictated that fear, whether it was real or perhaps perceived, that happens with administrative changes. So, Carlos, let me bring it back to you for a second. I think Gian used the example of Hong Kong, but there are also countries like Singapore that have really been able to turn around their situation of corruption. But a key part of that was corruption legislation that was extremely punitive. How do you think that factors into our turnaround here in Belize?
We have had that discussion with the cohort. As I say now, we have been very open with them, and they, in turn, that cross department discussion. The legislation that have been set, the Whistleblowers Act. I know the Whistleblowers Act has always been, has its pros and its cons, people against it, people who would not sustain it.
Why would people be against the Whistleblowers Act? Do you want to give us that perspective?
Pardon?
Why would people be against the Whistleblowers Act?
Oh, because if it is not well structured, then they are not protected and they can suffer consequences that are negative to them. Because a Whistleblowers Act can exist, but the wording within, and that is what we have said, we are looking forward to the wording, and I did expose it to them when we had the discussion in the course. I want to see the wording of the Whistleblowers Act. And again, I say I'm not a liar, but at least I can read and understand. And if the Whistleblowers Act hides within its wording the protection of the whistleblower, then it does not reach to its objective. Because the Whistleblowers Act is one that is going to protect the individual, both at the public offices or public sector and also in the private sector. Remember that corruption is not only a public sector issue. Corruption exists because there is a private sector that participates in the corruption action. If not, then the corruption wouldn't exist. There wouldn't be anyone that would be willing to do so. So it's this bisector, or these two sectors of the society.
They go hand in hand.
They have, So it needs to protect both sides, because if I am the administrator of a private enterprise, or I am the secretary of a private enterprise, and I am seeing that my boss is doing certain things with government officials, then I can speak out, but I need to be protected. That is one of the first videos, and that they had. It came from a study that was done by the Economist, in which whistleblowers lost their jobs. And that was sad, because it was a huge amount of whistleblowers that came together and exposed what they had. But they were honest. They were high value individuals. Their values were very high. So they decided to speak out. It didn't really matter what the consequence would be. And the consequence was negative. So that is why the Whistleblowers Act needs to be able to protect. It needs to protect. Then we also heard the Prime Minister mentioning, and I really hope it becomes a reality. The act of illicit enrichment.
Yeah, unjust enrichment.
Or unjust, that is going to be something that I believe we're waiting for.
Yeah.
And that shows that there is a political will that is leading to the concept of good governance, transparency, and ethics. And the general concept is accountability. There are other laws that will need to be coming into place, reinforce other laws that already exist, so that it can come into one that can network into the concept of good governance.
Things like illicit enrichment, I think, are such a crucial part of, something that our viewing audience can clearly identify with. They all see people within society who, no matter how much you try to justify, just cannot seem to explain why they are as wealthy as they are. They may have a business, it's not that lucrative. They may have a particular employment, the numbers don't add up. And they've seen this time and time again. They see friends, they see relationships, and assumptions are made. My question is, understanding that these things take place in our society, how would a legislation curb that?
Well, it has to be direct. As I said, it needs to be straightforward. One of the things that we saw is in Canada, there is a program that is being used where it has the name of all the public service, all the public officers.
Yeah.
When it used the term officers, it's holistic.
Yeah.
From the Prime Minister to whoever works and they being paid with taxpayers' money, including teachers who work also with the public and are being paid by government taxes.
So it's basically a register of all these names of these individuals.
Yes. And it says clearly how much they earn. And for example, if I know that close to my house there is a public officer, I can type in his name and I can see what is his salary. And Gian and Felix can tell you that we had a discussion on that. I can see that how much he earns, and that what he earns is not par to what he has. So I can report it. I as a citizen can take an action on that.
You look at public officers, which in this case, as you've mentioned, includes ministers of government, and you look at what they have going in and what they have amassed at the time when they make their exit. And you look at, for instance, what their salaries are and how they...
Are you asking the students or myself?
Either one of you guys.
Feels comfortable jumping in.
We cannot give names. We need to be very careful. No?
Yeah.
But we can see it in society. We can see it in society that we have many examples across administrations that has happened. And how can this public officer do or achieve so much when we know what is the salary of many of them, and how can they be, okay, yes, they can get a loan, but it takes so many years to be able to pay that loan, and so forth, and then you balance it. There can be some other incentives that the person can get, but even though adding all those other incentives that the person can get with its salary, it does not match. And we see it, and we Belizeans, we see that on a day-to-day. And that's why I am very happy that there is a political will to bring in this act of illicit enrichment. And it will definitely stem a new paradigm to erode this normal way of doing governance in our country. So I am really happy that these two acts have been already set on the table for us to move on to good governance, transparency, and ethics.
And what about openness in general? You know, one of the things that happened since this recent administration took over was a list of all the new hires along with their salaries. You pointed that out earlier. If there was a disclosing of salaries of even public servants and how they spend resources within the departments, would this be helpful? I always give the example, I think it's in El Salvador, that their Ministry of Tourism, you can go on their website, you can see every employee, how much they spent for travel for any one of their trips, whether they flew economy, whether they flew first class, how much they paid for their hotel. All that information is there for every trip taken on behalf of the ministry. This type of information we don't have access to. We don't see where the wastage takes place. How do you think things like this would help in being able to move us forward? And I want to get the trainees to tell us about that.
Okay.
All right, if I may jump in, that was actually one of our very first discussions, publishing of information that should be public knowledge. And I think it was probably the first or second class that we spoke about that. Certain documents need to be made public. Certain audit reports need to be published. Annual reports need to be published. We had the discussion about the salary register, the staff list. And that really is the next step. So you have the legislation that mandates that these things are made public. The next step is actually enforcement. So each department needs to be able to implement the law and certain watchdog bodies or departments actually enforce, go and investigate and prosecute if necessary. So the enforcement aspect is the next step, where if it's mandated that audit reports are able to be published, then we should follow through. And the person responsible doesn't do it, then there should be repercussions. No? Mm-hmm. There's also a need for better reporting mechanisms, as you mentioned, as Mr. Magana mentioned. The public needs to know how to report things, how to report, and anonymity, yes, in our small society is a concern. So there needs to be mechanisms built into legislation so that the person making the report, their identity should be kept anonymous where necessary. No, there are certain instances where the identity needs to be made known. And also just annual audits. Annual audits, we had the Auditor General make a presentation as well. Annual audits need to be, a greater emphasis need to be placed on having annual internal and external audits of these many departments.
Okay. So what's your hope? Let's get Feliz and Gian just to close this off for today. What do you hope will be the effect of once you've completed the course and you become the trainers who are then tasked to continue to spread this move towards good governance and proper ethics? What is your hope?
All right. Well, for me, like I said, the idea is to go and build a cadre of trainers. And so we have talked about being able to lean on each other for support. The Ministry of Public Service, I think their training unit is about 4 or 5 people, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously it's impossible for 4 or 5 people to train 14,000. So my hope is to build a network, I don't know if you want to call it, a group of champions of training towards good governance. And so we can organize these workshops, organize these annual refresher trainings, if that's what it comes to making an annual event. So we can have these discussions, we can make these things more public. Eventually, we'd want to see the public being more engaged, because there are instances where information is publicly available, but as Mr. Magana said, there's a lot of buzzwords, but sometimes that's where it ends. Just a lot of chatter, a lot of uproar on social media, but the next step is to hold us accountable, the public. Once given the tools, we expect, and civil society as well, to engage us in these trainings, make sure the trainings are occurring as the strategic plan envisions it. And so we actually move to the next step now of enforcement. So we raise the awareness, we set the minimum standards across the board. Now let's actually follow through and take it a step further. It's not a situation where we want to establish this training, sit on our laurels and don't move anywhere further. We want to see continuous improvement and reach certain milestones along the way.
Yeah. Feliz?
I'm sorry, I got kicked out for about 30 seconds. So I wasn't sure what
I was
the question.
asking you, actually, you're going to close us off. It's just asking you what your hope is. After you've completed this course, what do you hope will be the next step?
Okay, well, I'm hoping that I will be an agent of change. And also somebody who can, well, I had to do some, self-reflection. I think from time to time we need to do that, but this course has actually allowed me to reflect on, my own personal integrity and also within the organization. Yeah. So that is a boost for me. And so it is time to continue to talk about good governance in my office and also in the public, and to work towards it in any way I can.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning and having an open conversation about what you've been learning and what your hopes are. We wish you the best of luck. This is definitely a move in the right direction, and we hope that this does in fact become a situation where you have over 30 agents of change then dispersed throughout public service. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, the focus will be on sports. So please stay tuned.
Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
Smart continues to expand its internet coverage countrywide to help you live a smarter life.
Our villagers are very happy. They are pleased to know that Smart went the extra mile to put a tower in our village so that our villagers can get live stream on their TVs and they can get their kids doing their online classes. I want to say to Smart, thank you for making it possible for us to get internet in Gardenia Village. We really do appreciate it.
Smart continues to take the internet and mobile services to communities across Belize. Now save even more when you bundle your Smart broadband with Smart mobile services. Smart, bringing people together.
Dwayne Moody, Isani Cayetano, Andrea Polanco, Paul Lopez. Your News 5 Belize teams do whatever it takes. Go wherever they need to go, so you can catch the story wherever you are, whenever you want, on whatever device. Channel 5 Belize on television, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, because news is now everywhere, all the time. And so are we.
And welcome back. Our second conversation this morning is the effective development of a national sports system. And so with that, we have with us the National Sports Coordinator at the National Sports Council, Kaya Katus. We also have Director of the National Sports Council, Ian Kal, and Dr. Peter Davis. He's from the Apex Global Support Group. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
So we're discussing the national sports system. First of all, explain to us what that is and what it seeks to entail in terms of moving sports forward in this country.
Well, Isani, good morning, and thank you once again to you and Marlene for having us on the show this morning. The purpose is for us to mainly explain what we are doing at the National Sports Council and the purpose of Dr. Davis' visit to Belize and at the National Sports Council as well. We have been very busy, actually, quite busy at the National Sports Council these couple of months as we lead to bringing back sports into Belize. So we call it return to play. Over the past months, we have been visiting and meeting with various sporting associations and federations to ensure that, one, they have their COVID protocols in place, and two, to build that relationship, to strengthen that relationship back again with the National Sports Council. It is important because we're all in the same business, which is sports. Now, what we have been doing is that we have been wanting to strengthen back the way we do things at the National Sports Council, and that is why we have Dr. Davis with us to assist us in developing a strategic plan, but at the same time, he will be meeting with all federations and all associations in the days ahead to ensure that when we move together.
So, sports has been rather slow to return in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, we're only just seeing that permission has been, or authority has been given to some of the disciplines to be able to reopen. In the context of COVID-19, what are we looking at in terms of the continued or the return to some of the various disciplines, Ian?
Well, as you know, we have engaged in a phased approach. The first phase, which we are in right now, is that non-contact can play, they can practice, but contact sports can only practice. So there's no play in there. No competition is allowed. However, it all depends on how we can handle the sports at this moment. We are looking at a 3-month phase, so maybe by August 1st, we could see we're going into the second phase where contact sports can now start to play. I can say pretty much that it's looking very positive for August 1st for us to be able to open back sports in that area. However, we have been noticing a lot of recreational sports happening across the country as well, which we are not there yet, but it is kind of difficult for us to be able to monitor that aspect of the recreational sports in different areas around the country. However, when it comes to the National Sports Council side, what we are doing is that we are monitoring our facilities, our areas. That is why we engage the federations and associations to ensure that they have all of these things in place for them to transcend back to their people, to their sporting disciplines.
Let me shift over to Kaya for a second here. Now, Kaya, you wear two hats. You're with the National Sports Council. You're also with the Belize City Council as well.
And an athlete.
And well, 3 hats if that were the case, right? And an athlete as well. Share with us your perspective on all of this, because I believe that one of the mandates of the City Council is to also be able to promote and encourage sports and sportsmanship in the city, correct?
Definitely so, Isani. from the perspective of the National Sports Council, the phased approach that the ministry has taken is definitely a great one, because it gives us time to slowly get back into things with the restrictions that are in place. There are certain protocols that we need to follow, and each sport has their own. I believe that each federation or each organization, each event planner who decides to have a sporting event, if these protocols are followed properly, we should go through the first phase with no problem and easily transition into phase 2. And by the beginning of next year, we should be fully back to where we were before COVID protocols came into place.
So let's bring Dr. Peter into the conversation and talk about Apex and the model that you have. Firstly, tell us what your analysis of the Belizean sporting landscape has revealed.
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me onto the show, and it's great to be back in Belize. I was here about 5 or 6 years ago, working with some federations and the Olympic Committee to build strategic plans. And so this trip back this time, I haven't had enough conversations with federations to find out exactly where things stand right now. So what I'm talking with the Sport Council is about how to build a more effective national system, not just chasing a medal or having an event, but it's the whole system, the complex thing. And there are a lot of different moving parts of that. It's difficult to pull them all together and integrate them. So at the moment, until I start meeting with sport federations today, and I'll meet with the National Sport Council and the Olympic Committee later this week. And so we'll start to build a picture of where things have progressed since the last time, and what needs to happen to really put sports on the map in Belize.
Now, there are two things that you're talking about. You say developing sports, and very often what we have focused on is on pushing athletes. How critical is it? What would you say is one of the first steps? If we want to take sports serious in this country, what's one of the first things we have to get on our priority list?
I think there needs to be strong school programs, strong development programs, strong clubs. And so you need to build that base. You need to have more people involved in sport, not just to produce high-performance athletes at the top, but just so more people are involved in sport and physical activity and health-related programs. It's just good. It's good for the country, good for the health and medical status of the country. And so it's really hard to say this one's more important than that one, or should do this program or that program. It's really a totally integrated and aligned. An effective system is totally integrated and aligned. And so we want to make sure that the development side, the athlete development side, the family sport are all connected, and that high performance, good results in high performance come out of that. But it's really, it's an integrated, it should be a well-integrated system.
You know, as I see the video scroll of our volleyball team, or female volleyball team especially, it's such a great example of proving what sports advocates have been saying for such a long time, that we have to work with children to build them into not just sports enthusiasts, but professional athletes. And when we saw their stellar performance, and I'm talking about the female volleyball team, it was not overnight pulling together a team. It was a group of little girls that grew up to become professional players. Now, that takes resources. In a developing country where there are many competing priorities, how do you get a functional sports system in place with the realities of the economic situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you know, and I work with different countries. I work with some of the big wealthy countries, and I work with some of the small poorer countries where there are economic difficulties. And it's always a challenge to say, listen, we need a chunk of money for sport because someone else needs it for education, someone else needs it for defense or health or whatever it is. And I think the way forward, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself with the Sport Council here because we still have more meetings, but I think the way forward is really, it's to bring the education department, the health department, the sports sector together so that they're an integrated system. So, you know, the money invested in sport will have payoffs in education. The money invested in sport will have payoffs in health and the well-being of the country. And so if you look at it as an isolated sector of funding, it's less exciting and less return on investment than if you look at it as a combined resource. And so sport is part of education, it's also part of health, and so you're getting return on investment in multiple ways. So, you know, and you don't have a lot of money to spend on different things, and Belize doesn't have a lot of money to spend on sport, but that even a small investment will have a big return on investment. And so you start small and then start to build up. And then the other thing I'd say is there are lots of funding models in the world. You know, some is just straight government sponsorship, some is lottery sponsorship, lottery money going to sports and arts and education. Some of it's private investment, and some countries are completely private investment. So I think you know there's also the merit in looking at different combinations of the different funding sources, and not just 100% on government.
It is interesting because, for whatever reason, in Belize, we've always looked at sports as in isolation from everything else. You look at education and you look at sports, and for whatever reason, it's being treated differently. More so, the idea of synchronizing the Ministry of Health into this entire framework. That too, in my opinion, requires a lot of will and a lot of planning to have that kind of synchronicity, Doc.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, like I said, we often treat sport as just a game, but it's an important sector. It's important for tourism, it's important for health, it's important for education. So if we can bring all of those together, there's a better chance of getting the funding that you need, and a better chance of getting a better result versus just thinking of it just, you know, people playing games. So it's a very important sector. It's a very important part, not just of the health and education, but also the national pride, you know, the culture of activity, the culture of success. You know, that has benefits all the way down the road.
It is a rethink. It's a rethink of kids playing a game with a ball versus developing important tools for life, from the discipline that it takes to the determination that comes with following through. Kaya, these are all things you have been championing for years as a professional cyclist. Let me hear your take as to now being in part of the leadership in how sports will move forward in Belize. And while there aren't sports ongoing, it is a opportune time to get the plans in gear.
Definitely, Marlene. I've been at the National Sports Council for the better part of 10 years. And recently, I've been given the opportunity to sit at the decision-making table. And coming from the perspective of an athlete and knowing what it takes and what we need to give to especially our primary school kids, who the National Sports Council is mandated to ensure that they are taken care of as it relates to sport, I am overjoyed to be able to have the opportunity to be able to give back in a way like this. The programs that we offer to our primary schools, some might see it as just competitions, but in these competitions, we are actually preparing for the future. The thing leading up to the competitions we host annually for the 5 different disciplines, which are volleyball, basketball, football, softball, and track and field. These are actually preparing our youths for more sports in the future. And in the past, we have always looked at sport, as Dr. Davis said, as just a game. And it's not just that. There's a whole lot more. I mean, we can make careers, we can make a living, we can actually be a lot more, get a lot more, achieve a lot more from being an athlete. I think I'm a living example of that.
Yeah, and be healthier, because we can't miss that part of it as well, where you know, countries across the world are fighting an epidemic of overweight and obesity, even in children. You know, the appeal of sports or even training for a sport is one that can get us healthier. Let me step back for a moment, because you spoke of primary school competitions, but outside of the school system, Ian, maybe you can weigh in on this one. The working with federations is a critical part, and Belize has a unique structure because the federations don't necessarily fall under the government's purview, but they do have a lot of control as to how they spend the resources they do get. You know, whether it'll be invested in training athletes or building bleachers. You know, and so I wanted to get into how you foresee the future of that collaboration. Is Ian
Is that
still?
for you?
Ian, are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, just like to step back a little bit on the discussion just now when it pertains to the importance of sports and the young people, especially schools. In the meetings we're having with the Ministry of Education, we have identified that this was an issue. It is an issue. And what we need to do now is incorporate PE, physical education, as part of a more standardized curriculum now. What the ministry is saying is that, one, we need to give it importance, and two, it's not just PE as usual. What COVID has taught us is that sports is important, and true health as well, it is important. So what we are doing is that we're ensuring that when it comes to physical education in the schools are more standardized, and ensuring that our coordinators can come in and teach and get people, these teachers or per se or coaches certified in this specific discipline. I will give you a perfect example of what we're doing with the Football Federation of Belize. Is that one, it's a huge program that is coming into the country, which they call Football for Schools, or a football for every child. What the FFB will be doing is they will be funding these through the Ministry of Education and the National Sports Council to ensure that every school, being if they have a coach or if they have a teacher, is certified and is able to teach that discipline from the onset. How to kick a ball, how to bounce a ball. So what we will be doing is using FFP as a model to ensure that, to see how it will work, then we can transcend that to all other sporting disciplines like Kaya mentioned, basketball, softball, volleyball. This is what we will be using as a model for CA to ensure that whenever we go into the schools, it is more of a curriculum and is taken more serious, and not just a kid given a ball and just recess time.
Let's go back to August 1st. You've mentioned that more or less that is when sports will resume to some extent. Give us a detail or a breakdown, if I may, of what can be expected a few weeks from now leading up to August 1st.
Well, the second phase would include contact sports with 50% fan base. At this point, we are at 0 fan base. On August 1st, after contact sports comes in, it will be one, they can compete now. FFB has been seeking permission to compete now. Other disciplines have been asking permission to compete now. So on August 1st, once that the OK is given, and depending on where we are with COVID, we should see the commencement of contact sports, but with 50% fan base. If everything goes well after in the next 3 months after August 1st, then at the end of the year, we should see 100% fan base and sports coming back to normal in Belize.
So if we're looking at two primary disciplines that draw the biggest crowds, you're looking at soccer and you're also looking at basketball. You have the FFB and all its various leagues. You have the NABL and its program of events as well. So we're looking at 50% at the FFB Stadium, for argument's sake, and 50% at the city center, a scenario like that?
Yes, yes.
50% of the capacity of any facility.
So let's bring the conversation back to the way forward. Dr. Davis, talk to us about what, in recognizing changes or strategies that have to be put in place, a part of it is also seeing the benefits or the rewards in the end. What would you say are some of the key benefits that can happen if we do have a proper strategic national sporting plan?
I would say the things that you would probably look at the most would be things like percent of participation in different age groups of children, families, adults. You know, the longer term, you start to see a decrease in chronic diseases like heart disease or diabetes or obesity, things like that. But at the first level is really just to get more people more active. and trying different sports, having access to sports, things like that. So the first instance is just participation, in my opinion. Probably the second thing would be you would, if you have a two-pronged approach with participation and high performance levels, you just start to see some good results in major events that Belize competes in, like the Central American Games, the Central American Caribbean Pan American Games, and maybe even the Olympics. And I know you do have some athletes competing in Tokyo this year. So we'll be looking for that. Obviously, there'll be, the impact of whatever the Sport Council does now, it'll be a long time coming, but you have some athletes competing on the international stage, and so you'd see more people participating and better results at the top end internationally.
All right. So tell us how this planning phase moves forward.
Right now? You mean for this week or moving forward? Well, I'm having meetings with different federations just to find out, what things have changed since last time and where they're at in terms of their major barriers or their strategic plan. I'll be doing presentations on tonight and Thursday night on the elements of an effective sports system to federations and coaches and maybe teachers and others, and I believe some athletes perhaps. So we'll be starting off with just reviewing what's important for an effective national system. And then we'll start to meeting with Sport Council, having a look at the national sport policy, having a look at what their programs are, and so starting to put the pieces in place to have a more long-term plan to work with federations, to work with government, to work with schools, to build those elements. The elements of athlete pathways, the elements of talent identification, the elements of coaching development, coach education. So all the things that need to happen. We need to map them out carefully and make sure the different stakeholders are involved at the right level and start to put a long-term plan in place.
And Marlene, to elaborate on that, one of the things I'd like to stress on is the fact that the Ministry of Sports through the National Sports Council has come with a new vision, and we are doing things differently. And you can see this through this initial step in bringing in Dr. Davis to work through our national federation. So we're not trying to work from the top down, we're trying to work from the bottom up. It's a new approach, and I believe this time, under the leadership of the Honorable Kevin Bernard, it's definitely going to be a great one.
Okay.
All right, well, thanks a lot, guys, and we certainly look forward to August 1st to the resumption of sports and 50% attendance. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Sonny.
For having us.
All right, so we now go. You're welcome. We now go to our commercial break, and when we return, is to discuss the election and the convention that was held over the weekend by the National Garifuna Council. Stay tuned.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us, then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something, the Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. We are stronger together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
Hello, Belize. You may not be aware of the new travel requirements set in place by the Center of Disease Control and Prevention. Passengers traveling to the U.S. must present a negative COVID test or a documentation of having recovered from COVID-19 to travel to the U.S. In light of this, Maya, in partnership with Caring Hands Clinic, have established testing centers in all their municipal airports. Caring Hands Antigen Test Center is operational in San Pedro, Belize City, Dangrega, Placencia, and Hopkins. These testing facilities are staffed by licensed healthcare professionals, including doctors, registered nurses, and nurse practitioners. Testing is done using Abbott rapid test devices that are FDA approved and made in the USA. The service is safe, fast, affordable, and the close proximity of the centers makes them convenient. Walk-ins are welcomed, but appointments are encouraged. If you would like to make an appointment, please feel free to do so at make your appointment, get tested, and in 15 minutes, you can get back to your vacation.
With the touch of a finger, we can easily unlock our phones and securely gain access to our data. This technology is called biometrics, and the Social Security Board is introducing fingerprint recognition to make transactions and handling of your sensitive data secure, fast, accurate, and convenient. Is your identity safe? Fingerprint recognition will keep your Social Security record secure and confidential while making your access fast and easy. It protects your identity. Is your name a common one? Fingerprint recognition uses your unique characteristics, ensuring your hard-earned benefits go directly to you, the rightful owner. Tired of all the paperwork? Fingerprinting makes this hassle-free. Your convenience and your information security is our priority. Fingerprint recognition coming soon. Social Security at your fingertips.
Welcome back. Our final conversation for the morning is with the new representatives of the National Garifuna Council. Over the course of the weekend, the NGC held a virtual convention, and through that was the election of a new president. He joins us this morning from Hopkins, none other than Andrew Castillo. Good morning, Mr. Castillo.
Good morning, Mr. Annie. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
I am good.
We're also joined by the National Secretary of the NGC, Sheena Zuniga, who's also joining us from Belmopan. Good morning, Sheena.
Good morning, Isani.
Let's begin, guys, by talking about the convention. It's a virtual convention that was held over the weekend, which means it's a departure from the norm for you guys in terms of meeting and doing the whole face-to-face process. Talk to us about the interactions this time around and what it was all about.
Okay, great. The convention, we had more interaction because it was internationally themed, being that it was also streamed on Facebook. The conversations we had were based on the current issues that we're going through, our land issues. We had presentation from the Commissioner of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, Mr. Gregory Chuck. We've had Darrell Bradley, who spoke to us about land rights in Belize. We've also had presentation regarding our current project that we're currently working on regarding the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the Garifuna culture. So it was a very interesting conversation with our members. We got the opportunity to clear up issues and for them to interact better with us.
It is interesting that we talk about the effect of COVID-19 on the Garifuna community. What has been some of the feedback from members of the community in terms of the adverse or positive effects, if there are any, of COVID-19 in terms of bringing people together and how we're coping through the pandemic?
Well, when it comes to the adverse effects, we've had members who lost their jobs. And the positive out of that, they were able to create new jobs for themselves, being entrepreneurs, going back to farming.
Let's get you in on the conversation, Mr. Castillo. What you've offered yourself to become the president of NGC. Is there a particular vision that you have in mind in terms of seeing the progress or the onward movement of the Garifuna people in Belize?
Yeah, I offered myself for the position because I shadowed the past president for a couple of years as the first vice president. And I saw that there was so much that we had done as Garifuna people, National Garifuna Council and Garifuna people, but there was so much more to do, right? You know, my thoughts are that we need to strengthen the current alliances that we have.
Yeah.
Forge new alliances, reach out more to the Garifuna communities, recruit more members. Again, we need to remember that the National Garifuna Council is a voluntary council. The people who serve do this on a voluntary basis. So we need to find some ways and means of getting more members who have particular skills that can help us move forward. And we can only do that by venturing out there, again, like I will repeat myself, strengthening the alliances that we have and forging new alliances. So that's one of the things that I have in mind. The other thing I'm looking at is also, in terms of forging those new alliances, you want to have alliances with people whose vision is compatible to the vision and the philosophy of National Garifuna Council. We only want positive interaction with the new alliances that we will forge.
Is there a particular mandate that you guys have now that the convention is over with? You perhaps have a vision of the goals that you want to achieve over the next year or over the life of the term?
Go ahead,
Okay, yes, we actually do. What came out of the convention is the fact that National Garifuna Council, we need to educate our people more about what the issues are and try to have us be united more as a people. The second one is we're trying to actively work with the Midway Barranca situation, working along with, since we are members of ENIC, we're trying to come to a better solution and resolution that will be favorable to both indigenous parties. So that's two of the things that we're focused on.
Now, what has been, when you look at the past year or over a year and almost a half, the impact of COVID-19 has been one where a lot of the major events have been put off, and I know these are key, even fundraising factors for organizations like NGC. Moving forward, what's your plan to be able to get the type of resources you need to keep on moving towards implementing your action plan?
Well, that's a very good question because we are more focused on writing projects and getting grants that would highlight what we want to do, Marlene. Currently, we have three projects ongoing. We have the GF project, which deals with demarcation of the Garifuna communities. We currently have a project from Cultural Survival, which focuses on food security. And we're also currently doing a project with Territorial Affin that is sponsored by AICA that is focusing on the effects that COVID-19 has on the Garifuna communities. So we are currently working on more projects and writing more projects so we can move forward with the organization and what we intend to do.
And if I may piggyback on what Sheena has said.
Sure.
I have also submitted another project. Again, Sheena will not say anything about it because we haven't gotten any feedback as of yet. But I have submitted another project that deals with coastal management, in other words, mangroves, right? Conservation. And that is important for us as Garifuna people, given that we are coastal line people. And one of my vision also is that I would develop a team that will look for funding. I have already gotten a person who has skills in writing projects. He and I will sit together And I am thinking, my vision is that we have like 3 people. Yeah, myself, him, and another person who will sit down and scour the internet and look for these resources so we can write projects that can give us additional funding.
Okay. All right.
Is there any final word you want to leave us with in speaking to the broader Garifuna community that is watching at this point? Let's go with you, President.
Oh, okay. So what we want to do is to reach out to Garifuna people around the world, Belize and Garifuna people around the world, because National Garifuna Council represents Garifuna people from Belize. It doesn't matter as to what part of the world you are at, you can become a member of the National Garifuna Council. I want people to know that very clearly, because it seems as if there was some confusion in terms of whether, if I'm living abroad, can I join the National Garifuna Council? Yes, you can. What community, because we have 12 branches out there. Which branch should I be affiliated with? Well, your choice. If you come from Hopkins, then you affiliate yourself with the Hopkins branch. If you come from Belize City, Belmont, whatever, that's the branch that you affiliate yourself with. So that's what we want to do, reach out to Garifuna people around the world, especially those who come from Belize.
All right. Well, we thank you for telling us about the convention that you guys had, and most importantly, to be able to introduce the new faces of the executive. Of course, new in this capacity, I should say, as you've both been with us before, and we look forward to having even more conversations in the time to come.
Thank you so much.
All
Thank
right.
you for having me.
Stay safe and best of luck.
Y'all do the same.
All right. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take our final break, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap-up, so stay tuned.
Hola, Tony.
Hey, Kevin, ¿qué onda? ¿Qué pasa?
Nada, le vine a buscar porque necesito comprar más mercancías de vasos y platos desechables para mi tienda de comestible. Me estoy quedando sin esas cosas.
No, hombre, fíjate que desde el 15 de abril no puedo importar nada de eso. Y se me acaba de terminar todo lo que tenía hace como 3 semanas.
Oye, pero nunca has estado sin esas cosas. ¿Qué está pasando?
Mira esto. Esta es la nueva ley que prohíbe todo el uso de plásticos no reutilizables. Esos son vasos, platos, cucharas, tenedores, todo eso. Desde 15 de abril de este año no he podido importar nada de eso. A partir del 15 de enero del 2021 nadie puede fabricarlo. 15 de abril 2021 nadie lo puede vender. Y a partir del 14 de julio del 2021 si alguien te agarra con eso, te multan.
Híjole, no sabía eso. Necesito cambiar algunas cosas. Les diré a mis clientes por qué esas cosas ya no están disponibles. Gracias, Antonio.
Así es, cuídate, man.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us, then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something. The Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. We are stronger together. The Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
It's a fact that with Smart, you get truly unlimited everything. Only with Smart, you get unlimited data anytime. While with the other guy, it's only double data on weekends. With unlimited data every day with Smart, there's no need to wait. So, it's a fact that our unlimited plans beat the competition. Stop being measured and told when to use your data and get unlimited talk, text, and data. Experience the true unlimited plans with Smart. That's a fact. Make the switch and live smart.
And we're back.
We had a diverse show this morning.
Yeah.
We began by talking about the good governance and ethics course that's underway through Galen University, and the fact that it has a cohort of 30 public officers who are in various aspects of heads of department. And they will now, or upon the completion of their course, go forward and share that newfound knowledge with their colleagues. It is interesting because all of this is happening in the context of the whole industrial action and the fact that there is a call for good governance and all these measures to be put in place. So I think that I find to be very interesting, more so to see what will happen when the course is over and these guys now take it from the classroom and put it into practice.
You know, I mean, I think it's it's a wonderful effort that they're making to be able to kind of get the culture reignited again. I always feel, and we do it all the time, we make these blanket statements, oh, public service is this, police is that, you know, and there are people who are very dedicated to their work. Even in the most inefficient system or workplace, there are dedicated employees, there are people who want better. And you know, I think what can happen with a course like this, it can get kind of that energy going again, where they work together and keep each other accountable. But you are right, to be able to talk about a training for good governance at a time when the very public service is striking for good governance measures from the very top, it's very ironic. But this is a collaboration between Galen University and the ministry, and I think it's a wonderful effort. You know, I can't help but walking away from that conversation thinking that I've heard it communicated in conversations publicly before, where even within the school system, we need to get some of this information in. I know in my era, we still learn civics. That was a part of our schooling. But even beyond learning just about civics, it's about learning, it's that ethical factor, that integrity factor, what makes you understand how your role is significant in the larger scheme of things. And while it's great to be able to capture public service now that they are there, maybe it's time to rethink these types of programs, even for younger ones, so they grow up understanding this necessary culture.
Certainly. And then we're looking forward to August 1st. I know athletes are going to be breathing a sigh of relief when they're able to actually engage in certain sporting activities that would see fanfare return to, you know, these sports as well. We're looking at 50% in the first instance come August 1st. But as the director of sports mentioned earlier, depending on how things work out in a 3-month period thereafter, we would be seeing a full return to sporting activities and, of course, the spectatorship of those sports.
And while it wasn't mentioned, I'd imagine, or I'd venture to guess, that that is all dependent on our COVID situation, which we, of course, keep on monitoring. We know there was an outbreak or a cluster of cases that were identified at the casino and subsequently trickled into some of the schools. We keep on monitoring that situation to find out just how much the virus has spread or how many more people have been infected. And the vaccination rollout is a key part of that conversation as well. So I'm sure that August 1st date has a lot to do with how much we have the pandemic or the spread of COVID-19 under control. So even more incentive for you to keep on being safe.
And finally, I just want to say congratulations to the new executive of the National Garifuna Council, and I wish them the best of luck in their endeavors going forward as we move towards promoting and preserving Garifuna Duo in Belize.
That's right. And with that, we are going to wrap up our show. If you want to get in touch with us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes Easy and on Instagram at OYEBelize. Remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
To start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your hearts open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.